father, the Gamas. Their home parish is at St. Francis Xavier. And I sat on my grandmother's couch, full of pride, full of anxiety, full of, self-doubt. And I said, Grandma, I've done everything everybody's ever asked me to do, and I'm not happy. She's like, well, what's the matter? She's like this tall, and licking my wounds. And she says, it'll be fine. I was like, I've read all the books that I'm supposed to read, and I still haven't read the Bible. I was like, can I have a Bible? She's like, oh, sure, of course, of course you can have a Bible. She gets up, runs into the closet, pulls out a Bible, and it was The Way. I think it was a famous Bible in the 70s. And she brings it over to me and said, thank you. And so that was where I began to look for answers. And it sounds simple, it sounds kind of quirky, but it really, really meant a lot to me that she would not judge. She just was there to listen and trusted that something was happening, So when your grandkids come to you for answers, just listen. Just listen, Don't try to force them to do stuff. So I took that Bible back to college, and I would, I'd see it on my nightstand, and I'd come home from partying, and I'd just be like, oh, man, really? Really? And in one of my experiences with God, I opened up to this passage. I opened up the Bible at random, okay? So mathematically, to open up to this passage is beyond statistics. Beyond statistics. And this is what I heard. Take care to do all of these things, for you know the time in which we are living. It is now the hour for you to wake from sleep, for our salvation is closer than when we first accepted the faith. The night is far spent. The day draws near. Let us cast off deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us be on the retreat and just terrified that I had to go to confession. I mean, I was really scared because, I think the only previous time before that was maybe grade school, and I had done some pretty bad stuff since then. So, I was just real nervous and just had a lot of anxiety. And the priest there, encouraged me to go, and he was very good, very pastoral. And he said, anything that you've done, God has the power to forgive that, and He loves you. And I really trusted Him. I opened up and shared, some of my sins with Him, and I experienced, really for the first time since I was a little kid, something transcendent, something otherworldly, and it really affected me, but it didn't have a long-lasting effect. It opened my heart and mind for a brief moment, but again, I had no foundation to allow that to grow. So I went to the University of Southern Colorado for 2 years out of high school. I graduated from South High School in 1998, was a state champion in baseball. I dated a high school cheerleader, so I was kind of very superficial in my adult or young adult life. And the next stage for me, I wanted to try to become an engineer. I was good at math and science, so I stayed 2 years here in Pueblo and studied at USC in their pre-engineering program. It's now CSU at Pueblo, I know, but at the time it was USC. And I loved it. I really did. And it was just a time for me to be on my own and to choose to study on my own, to choose to read books on my own, choose to do my homework on my own. And it gave me another sense of identity. It was really, really wonderful. And around this time, I became a fly fisherman. A friend of mine in high school was a big outdoorsman, and he encouraged me to fly fish when we were about 14, 15. And of college, which I was 18, I started coming home with these big fish, and my father was very, very curious about that because we grew up as fishermen. And he's like, you got to teach me how to do this. This is great. So I don't think there's any coincidence that Jesus called fishermen as His disciples, because this is where I experienced God. We live in a beautiful, beautiful state. And when I was out on the river fishing 3-4 days a week when I was in college, you want to talk about experiencing something transcendent. Just a sunset or just a stream coming off the Rockies. It's a wonderful contemplative moment, and we could really enter into the presence of God in those moments, and we should be grateful for that living in this state. So anyway, I would go out there and I would just talk to God little by little, you know, like as you would talk to a friend. I didn't necessarily identify God with the risen Lord yet. That came later. But I was open to enter into a relationship. So that led to my next decision, which was to continue my education at Colorado State University. I found out that all of my partying buddies from high school transferred to CSU to join a college fraternity and continue the excitement and the camaraderie that we had in high school. So that was my initial draw to go to Fort Collins. I wanted to get away from the family a little bit and kind of go off and be on my own. And many of you have, you know, sons and daughters and grandchildren that do this, and it's scary. And believe me, it is. So we need to pray for them. But I went, and one of the things I promised myself I would do, I said, okay, before I get involved in any social life, I want to make sure I could do school first. So I got up there, and I got a 3.8 in civil engineering at Colorado State University. And that's a tough school. It's one of the top engineering schools for civil in the country. So I had self-confidence. I said, okay, I'm going to make some choices. I'm going to open up my social life at Fort Collins. Well, that was the downfall of my life when I got up there. I had a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun. But any moral fiber that my parents instilled in me, totally out the window. And it really became the death of my spiritual life. It really, really did. And I went through a breakup in a relationship which created some more pain and emotional strife. And that pain became the catalyst for finding a remedy. So all the pain sometimes that we experience in life, you know, we ask, why God? Why did I experience the loss of a loved one? Why did I lose this person that I care about? Or why am I getting sick? Don't ignore those signs. Those might be an opportunity to enter into a deeper relationship with God. And I'm not saying don't feel the pain, because sometimes it is painful. But it might be a message from the Lord. So I got to a point in my studies where I was, you know, passing. I wasn't an A student, but I was asking the question, why am I not happy? I've done everything that my parents have asked me to do. I've done everything my teachers have asked me to do. I've had all the fun that I could have in my mind at that time, and I'm still miserable. What's wrong? There's something wrong with this picture. So right around that time, 9/11 happened. The two towers fell in New York. So I don't know how many philosophers we have in this room, but the philosophical term that struck me was I had an existential moment when 9/11 happened. And the reality of death entered into my consciousness. I was very patriotic at that time, and when we got attacked in this country, it caused me to reflect on my own limitations, the fact that I'm not going to be here forever, and it really placed a significant what if I'm not going to be around forever. And many of that question, you know, some of those questions weigh on our hearts and minds all the time. And for me, that was another catalyst to seeking out God. But I didn't have any answers. I had teachers who were maybe agnostic, atheistic. If they were Catholic or Christian, they were not allowed to give their views in the classroom. So I had no source of finding answers for the questions that were coming up in my mind and heart. So where did I go next for answers? Now, some of you know this story, but I actually found some answers on the couch in my grandmother's house. I came home to Pueblo after a tough semester. I went to my dad's mother.